I'm delighted to be joined by broadcasting legend Jeff Stelling. You've had such an amazing career, and I think you might have given the world the greatest live television moment of all time, because when you and Chris Kamara were interacting and he didn't know that somebody had been sent off, tell me what on earth is going through your head at that moment?
No, well, what's going through my head was I thought, that's Cammy for you. I mean, it was fantastic. I remember it, obviously it was down at Fratton Park and there's been a red card. And in fairness, in defence to Cammy, he didn't have the best view of the pitch at the time. And it was also raining. But when he came back and said, red card, must have missed that. Red card. You know, um, Not neither of us at the time realized that it was going to become, that it was going to go viral for a start, which it did. Cammy was in demand worldwide the next day, to explain just what had gone wrong. So neither of us realized the enormity of it. In fact, Cammy was afraid that when he got back to the office, he was going to get bollocked, for making such a hash of things, when we all thought in the end it was wonderful.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful, and it made you guys so famous, so enjoyed by the British public. And you guys have gone on such an incredible venture together, going all the way to Sri Lanka for World's Most Dangerous Roads. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience? I imagine that must have been crazy.
It was. Look, it was fantastic. I'd never seen Cammy drive a car before. And having seen him drive on the roads in Sri Lanka, I don't really want to see him drive again either. And likewise, I think he feels the same about me. But it was great because obviously at that time, we'd both left Sky. We hadn't worked together again since leaving Sky. So when the production company rang up and said they'd like us to do that, Cammy had been off for some treatment on his voice. He'd been to Mexico. I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you for some what was then experimental treatment on his voice, improving speech and things. It worked so well that the production company came to us and said, "Do you feel like doing it?" And yeah, it was a wonderful trip. We had a lot of fun. Were a lot of scary moments as well during the course of it. The only one downside was that when we got on the flight back home via Qatar, I think it was, on the way back, as we boarded the plane, Hartlepool United were winning 2-1 away at Oxford City. And when we landed, we lost 5-2. So there you go.
Well, I'm glad that the rest of the trip was pretty good for you. But you've
Yeah.
had so many amazing colleagues over there, Phil Thompson being another. And it was fantastic when you guys verbally sparred together over Daniel Sturridge's dive. So tell me, what was it like going toe to toe with him in that moment?
Tomo. Well, it was always fun going toe to toe with Tomo because, um, obviously with Tomo's passion for Liverpool, it made him an easy target. Anything to do with Liverpool was neat. I mean, I remember, for instance, it's great that the FA Cup's thrown at Liverpool against Barnsley again, because I can remember when they played each other, and Barnsley scored in the 90 something minute. I think it was Brian Tinian, if my memory serves right, scored a winning goal for Barnsley at Anfield. Now, Tomo was on the panel at the time, and I'm pretty sure Matt Letitia was covering the game. And the the joy on Tisser's face when Barnsley scored the winning goal and the pain on Tomo's face. It was just I mean, the contrast was sensational, and we all had tears running down our face, with the laughter at poor old Tomo because he felt it so much. So he was a soft target, and on the show, people thought sometimes that we didn't get on, but he's like one of my very best mates in the world. So yeah, he was fun. They were great guys, are great guys.
100%. You've had a great adventure with Chris Kamara and Tomo. And I know you had a bit of experience working with George Best as well. Can you tell me what that was like?
Bestie, yeah, Bestie was the first was on the first set of panels, so he was one of the original Soccer Saturday panelists along with Rodney Marsh, Brad McClintock, and sometimes Clive Allen and sometimes Tomo actually as well. And Bestie was by then he was front page news rather than back page news, but he'd been a wonderful player. And I was lucky enough, I mean, I can remember him playing and what a fantastic performer he was. I actually played against him in a charity match once. And actually, I was marking him. Okay, so he's past his heyday, but not that far past his heyday. And as he approached me, unknowingly, unwittingly, I'd opened my legs, and of course he nutmegged me. And by the time I'd turned round, he turned round as well and nutmegged me going back the other way. So it was a double nutmeg, something I was a lesson I've learned quickly. Look, Bestie was on the show, pretty shy, pretty retiring, but he was George Best, one of the greatest players the world's ever seen. I tell people, there's kids now, George had a little spell where for a short time, people now will talk about the best players in the world, Ronaldo, Messi. George was up on their level for a short time in his career. He was that good. But he wasn't, said from our perspective, being on the panel, there'd be four panelists. But often when you book George, and my then boss said to me, George has got a job for life. When you booked George, you weren't ever sure he was going to turn up. So we used to have a substitute waiting just to replace George in case he didn't show. Alan Mullery, former England captain, he would come in every couple of weeks, and sometimes he would only appear really if George wasn't there. If George didn't turn up. And the other couple of weeks, Nigel Spackman, ex-Liverpool, Chelsea, Rangers, same thing. He would be a sort of substitute if George didn't turn up. But as I say, such was George's status that my then boss, a brilliant fellow called Vic Wakeling, said that don't care when George doesn't turn up, he has a job for as long as he wants it, a job for life. And poor boy, in fact, did have a job for life because obviously he was taken from us much, much too soon.
An absolute legend of the game, George Best. And of course, you're a legend of the game too. Every football fan across the country, you were in their living rooms every single Saturday. And I know that you used to prepare for that show at Winchester Services, didn't you? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, that was when my boys were very much younger, I've got a couple of sons and a daughter. So when my boys were sort of 4 or 5, they didn't quite get the fact that, daddy needed all day, generally speaking, on Wednesday and Thursday to prepare stats and topics of conversation and a million other things. So I thought, we're going to get some peace and quiet. And I didn't want to drive all the way from Winchester, where I lived, or still live actually, up to London. So where can I go? And the obvious choice was the nearest service station. So, yeah, I used to go to the Winchester services on the M3. And if I wanted to change, instead of going to the northbound services, I'd go to the southbound services. So just for a bit of variety, I didn't want people to think I was a boring so-and-so.